All right, I'm going to start with the take-home quiz. Work this out for you. All right, so we're going to write each one of these. It says write the polar equation, which means it has to have an r and or theta in it. Sometimes they just have r, sometimes it's just theta, and sometimes it's both. But I got to get it out of the xy form, and some of y'all kind of got, I don't know if you actually got stuck or you thought you were done or what was really happening there. So there's a couple of ways to handle number one. First of all, if you understand that it's super basic for a polar equation, so you could just write the answer and know what it is. If it's a circle that's centered at the pole and the radius is 7, because we've graphed those, so we should be able to kind of know just what they are in reverse of that, it's really just r equals 7. If you really don't have any idea and you're not really sure how to just know that, there's some steps you can take for that as well. Circle with center at the pole and radius 7. So you're going to start by putting it in rectangular form, which would look like this. X squared plus y squared equals 49. Okay, that would be how this is defined here. Then you can substitute to get it into polar form. Well, for x squared plus y squared, we substitute r squared, so r squared equals 49, and that's where you get the r equals 7. Okay. Don't necessarily have to show work on that one. If you understand this, that is fine. All right, so then we have a line through the pole passing through the point -1, 1. So you can write an equation for that in rectangular form if you want. You can understand what's happening visually with this. So if I have a point, I know it's going through the pole, so that's the origin, and it goes through -1, 1, right? Well, then that line is just y equals -x. And once you get that line, then you can do some substitution. Now, you can also understand that since it is just a line that passes through the pole here, that we can just take the arctangent of that point, or the x and the y value there in that point, and that'll give us our angle. Because a line that passes through the pole is just going to be a theta equals line. And so I need to know what that theta is, and so that's how much it tilts, or what the slope is. And so when I take the tangent inverse of 1 over -1, then I can figure it out from there. Now, if that just kind of, if you're not really sure what to do with that, once you get it in this form and you understand what's happening, we can just substitute. So if I'm going to substitute, let's just go that way. I'm going to get r sine theta equals -r cosine theta. So I'm going to divide both sides, and I'm going to get r sine theta over r cosine theta, and that's going to equal -1. Well, the r's cancel out, and the sine over cosine becomes tangent, so I really have the tangent of theta is equal to -1. So theta is equal to the tangent inverse of -1, right? But the x was negative, so I would have to add pi to it, or 180, depending on, and it didn't say whether it had to be in degrees or radians here, so it did not matter. Now, you don't necessarily have to go through all of that if you understand that your answer is just going to be a theta equals, and what you're doing is trying to figure out what this angle is. Well, the angle is just the tangent inverse of these right here, but you got to get it in the right quadrant, because the tangent inverse of -1, okay, so we really can, for the line, you can kind of do it either way. The tangent inverse of -1 is negative pi fourths, right? So that negative pi fourths would work, because even if I had this angle, then the line's going to go through the other side of the angle as well. If I add pi to it, I'm going to get 3 pi fourths. Really, either one of them is okay, but when your x is negative, you should add pi just to be safe, because sometimes you have to do that because you get the wrong angle. And it is 3 pi fourths. Some of you gave it to me in degrees, which is fine. Some of you gave me a different one in radians because it didn't really say, and that's okay, but that's how we get that. Okay, so then y equals -2. Now, some of you had an answer that I did not count wrong, but I wrote other stuff out there, because if I substitute, what I'm going to substitute for y is r sine theta, and that equals -2. Okay, and some of you just left it like that, and Unfortunately, a lot of the ones you're given are kind of in that form, and it's not r equals like it should be. So it really should solve for r. So there's two different options here. R can equal negative 2 over the sine of theta. That's okay. Or, since sine theta is in the denominator, the reciprocal of sine is cosecant, so r can equal negative 2 cosecant theta, and either one of these is fine. But not this one. I'm not going to count this one correct on the test. So your y-axis, we can go about it this way again if you want, but if you know what the y-axis is, so your y-axis is right here. That means it is an x equals line, and so your x would equal 0, right? That's what the actual equation is in rectangular form. But when you have a line that passes through the pole in polar form, it's just a theta equals, and so it's theta equals, this would be pi halves, or really you could do 3 pi halves, or the negative versions work as well. You got lots of options where you don't in rectangular form. Again, I could take this and I could substitute and do some stuff there, but I don't need to because that's what I have. So then I have a circle with the center 5, 0, and the radius of 5. So that means in rectangular form, that is going to be x minus 5 squared plus y squared equals 25. So we've been taking it from polar form and putting it into rectangular form a lot, but remember, these are just the inverses. Just you do the opposite stuff. So we had to work to get it into this form. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to get it out of this form. So I'm going to go ahead and square this, and that's going to give me x squared minus 10x plus 25 plus y squared equals 25. Right, so in order to substitute things in for x squared and y squared, I need x squared plus y squared. So I'm going to leave x squared plus y squared on the left-hand side. That's equal to, I'm going to move this over here, so that's going to give me a positive 10x. And then when I subtract 25 from both sides, they just go away. So now I substitute. For x squared plus y squared, I substitute in r squared. For x, so I still have this 10. For x, I substitute in r cosine theta. Well, now I can divide both sides by r, and that's going to leave me with r equals 10 cosine theta. So now I am changing these to rectangular, which means I have to have an x and a y in there, and I need to get it, the r and the thetas out. So if I have on number 1 a line with a 60-degree angle to polar axis through the pole, that means my polar version of this equation is theta equals negative 60. Right, well, I need theta out of there, and I need x and y in. So to substitute for theta, what you substitute theta in for is the tangent inverse of y over x. That's equal to negative 60. I'm going to take the tangent of both sides so that y over x is equal to the tangent of negative 60. Okay, so tangent of a positive 60, because my reference angle is 60, so tangent of 60 is the square root of 3. But that's negative 60, so that's in the 4th quadrant, and in the 4th quadrant, tangent is negative, so this really gives me y over x is equal to negative square root of 3, so y equals negative square root of 3x. All of this is, to get it out of here, if it's a theta equals, your slope here is the tangent of whatever your angle is. That's all that's happening. So same thing here. My slope is just the tangent of 150, and it's a y equals something x type of line because it's passing through the pole, which means my y-intercept is at 0. So I can go through this process again, but the tangent of 150, okay, so 150 is over here. My reference angle is 30. Tangent of 30 is square root of 3 over 3. But in the 2nd quadrant, tangent is negative. So it's going to be negative square root of 3 over 3. So I just get y equals negative square root of 3 over 3x. You don't have to do any work, but if you need to, because it's better for some people to be consistent and just do the straight substitution. Substitute for theta, tangent inverse. So you get the tangent inverse of y over x. I'll just go and do it. Tangent inverse of y over x is equal to 150. So that means that y over x is equal to the tangent of 150. Okay? So that means that y over x is equal to negative square root of 3 over 3. And that means then that y equals negative square root of 3 over 3x. And that is the same thing I got from the very beginning by just understanding to do that one thing. Okay, but again, that's why I showed you from the beginning to substitute everything, so you don't have to overthink it if that kind of stuff confuses you. Okay, theta equals pi. Of course, sometimes it's easier just to kind of do it that way. If theta equals pi, that's your 180. Okay, so that means that theta always equals 180 no matter what the radius is. So your line is this line right here. It is a horizontal line, so it's a y equals line, so it's just y equals 0, and you don't have to go through all of that. You can, and you'll get, because the tangent of pi is 0, and there you go, you get 0 times x, which is 0. Oops. All right. So now I have on number 4, r equals negative 12 cosine theta. So I need to in order to substitute, I have something I can substitute for r, but I can't substitute something just for cosine theta. It has to be r cosine theta. So I need to multiply both sides by r. So it's going to give me r squared equals negative 12r cosine theta. Then I can substitute. For r squared, I substitute x squared plus y squared. For r cosine theta, I substitute x, so negative 12x. So then I'm going to move this over so I can complete my square, and I'm going to get x squared plus 12x plus, and take half and square it, that's 36, plus my y squared. I added the 36 over here, so I have to add 36 over there. Then that gives me x plus 6 squared plus y squared equals 36. Some of y'all that are skipping steps are getting signs backwards here, so be very careful. All right, so here, these kind of look similar. I mean, obviously one's sine and one's cosine, but they are even different than that because I don't need to multiply both sides by an r here. That's not necessary because I have something for r sine theta. R sine theta is just y, so this is y equals 8, and I'm done. I'm going to stop here on this video because, of course, I didn't get started right on time. When math time started, I only have 5 minutes left, so I'll do the second part. I'll do the actual review in a separate video.